My name is Tara Hodgson. I teach primarily grade 9 at the moment.
Okay. How long have you been teaching for?
This is my 17th year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You look very young to be
Oh, thank
teaching
you.
for 17 years. Okay. So let's start with, are smartphones allowed in your school or your classroom?
um, Up until this year, yes, they were. We tried something a little different this year in that they obviously have them at school, but they're not to have them in the classroom. Like, even
Mm,
if we see them, we're supposed to remove them, send them to their lockers. I
okay.
know some kids probably do have their phones, but if it's not an issue and I don't see it and they're not out, then it's not an issue.
Amazing. How
Yeah.
has that been going?
Better than I expected. There's a couple of kids who are really struggling, who are definitely like I would consider addicted to their
Hmm.
smartphones.
Right.
But other than like a few of them, most of the kids are doing okay. However, like the bathroom breaks, like I'll notice if you're wandering through the halls, you'll see kids like with their heads in their lockers, quickly checking, sending a message, going on TikTok or whatever it is.
Hmm.
So they're still accessing it,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. But if they're seen with it outside of their locker, then they are asked to put it in their
Um,
locker.
Put it back in their locker, or if
Okay.
it's like an issue for like a particular kid, some of them will be sent to the office for the day
Okay.
and then picked up at the end of the day.
Okay. Do you feel like the locker solution is the best option, or do you feel like it would be better if they were left at the front at the admin office?
Honestly, I think in general, schools would just be better without them there at all. Like I've heard of some schools going to the point where the kids drop off their phones at the beginning of the day, pick them up at the end of the day.
Right.
I think we'd have more parent pushback than anything at
Mm-hmm.
our school.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would be better because just like you see them, like they're thinking about it, even though it's not beside them, they need to go
Mm-hmm.
check. Like it's that need to always check.
Yes. Okay. And we'll talk about parent pushback because that's
Yeah.
a theme. But
Mhm.
okay. So what differences have you noticed from last year to this year with not having a ban and then now having a ban? What comes to mind?
Um, I guess like there is definitely more focus. However, I just think the problem is so far gone that even removing them from the classroom isn't enough because even though it's not on them and they are maybe able to have their focus a little bit better on the task at hand,
Hmm.
just like the lack of attention span, the inability to be bored and the inability to be uncomfortable, like that's
Hmm.
still very prevalent in the
Hmm.
classroom.
Okay. Have they gotten more used to it as the year has gone on? I mean, they've had a few months.
Mhm.
Have they gotten a little more comfortable or they're still just like very uncomfortable?
Some kids, I think there's just such a wide span of them.
Hmm.
Some kids are okay with it. I think those are probably the kids who already have boundaries with their phones and
Hmm.
have limitations with their phones. There are a few kids that I still struggle with almost on a daily basis.
Mm.
Their focus is, it's just not what it used to be, I guess, in general. Like if you look
Hmm.
at a junior high classroom as a whole now compared to what it was 17 years ago,
Okay.
I think it's a huge difference in that ability to focus, that ability to, that longer attention span, that ability to be bored
Hmm.
sometimes. That's very challenging for some kids.
Yeah. And how old are these kids? Like 14?
Yeah, 14, 15 are most of the grade nines.
And so they had a screen based childhood. So they
Yes,
legitimately just have not developed the ability to sit and be bored or focus. And now they're being asked to do that for the first time in school. And that, yeah,
exactly.
I can imagine how hard that
Yeah.
is.
Like I think of, when kids are toddlers and they have those moments where they have to sit and wait.
Yeah.
Kids don't have to do that anymore.
My
Parents
kids
put,
do.
yeah, well, mine too.
Yeah, good.
But like I was sitting at the doctor's office with my daughter, and
Yeah.
everywhere you look, there's kids on their parents'
Yeah.
phone or on a tablet.
Hmm.
And so those are just such simple times to like settle in that feeling of boredom and having to
Yeah.
wait. And they don't have that opportunity. So many kids, even at lunchtime, they're sitting, they're eating, they're with their peers, but they're all staring at a screen
Hmm.
because that's the moment they can have that back.
Oh, so they can have it at lunch. It's just only
Yeah.
during classroom time they can't
Yeah.
have it.
As soon as lunch recess time hits,
Mm,
they have access to the phones.
okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Is this in middle and elementary too in your district or?
Yeah, just like, so our school is a kindergarten to grade 9 school.
Oh, okay.
We're
Are
a
you in
rural,
Canada?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. You said.
And we're a rural school. So yeah, we go all the way up to grade 9. So like in the primary age, it doesn't really affect them that grade 1 to 3, but you
Mm-hmm.
do already see like the 4, 5s, and 6s. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them are bringing phones to school already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's sad. That's very sad.
it's crazy.
Any creative way kids are trying to sneak, your students are trying to sneak their smartphones into the classroom?
Oh yeah, there's a couple who always, and it's so obvious, when they're like
Yeah.
looking down at their lap, like
Right. Right.
smiling. Sometimes if the lights are off, you can see the light reflecting off of their chin. I'm like,
Mm.
it's pretty obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So any other benefits you've seen since smartphones have been banned? Test
I
scores or anything like that?
um again, it's a little too
Yeah.
soon to see. I think in general, like reading levels are just so much lower than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my classroom right now, I have a reading levels all the way from grade 2 to grade 12, like all in between.
Mm-hmm.
So that dynamic, like already kids are just at a disadvantage because frankly, just kids aren't reading anymore
Yeah.
at all.
At all.
And
And if they are, it's
yeah,
on a digital screen where they absorb
yes.
less.
And actually, our school, well, our province, so I live in Alberta,
Mm-hmm.
we have provincial achievement tests at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And our province is pushing to have all of the tests done digitally. So this year's a trial year. We're opting out, but
Mm-hmm.
next year all tests have to be done digitally. So they're reading
Mm-hmm.
like huge long passages, doing comprehension, everything on a screen.
Yeah. And I want to say the US is already there because we
Hmm.
want all of those test scores digitized and the
Yeah.
ability to consolidate easily, which like I understand, but we
Hmm.
have to. But then what we're seeing is poorer test scores. So it's like
Yes.
just doesn't make sense. You
That's
said
what
the
we're,
reading, sorry, the reading
yeah.
levels in your ninth grade class are between grade 2 and 12.
Yes.
Okay. There's
In the
ninth graders.
last, I would say like 5 years, I want to say. And I know that like COVID is obviously going to be used as an excuse for a lot of that as well, which I
Mm-hmm.
don't disagree with. But I honestly like seeing like the span grow greater and greater and greater.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like maybe my grade 9 classroom, 12 years ago, you have like your couple of low kids, your really high achieving kids, and then most kids kind of hung around in that average where I could work with them and they could become, stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Now the makeup of the classroom is just so varied
Mm-hmm.
because you do have the kids who are reading,
Mm-hmm.
and who have been encouraged to read. Those are my high achievers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a huge crew, like a low, low, low crew who struggle just to read grade level anything. And then a much smaller group in that average range.
Yeah. Okay. God, imagine if COVID happened and we didn't rely so much on screens. Like these kids would have been reading a
Mm-hmm.
ton, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think COVID took kids out of the school, but it also put them in front of screens more even than they were already in front of
It didn't
screens.
have to. I mean, yes, they had to do school on screens,
Mm-hmm.
but the parenting comes in there of like,
Absolutely.
yeah, my kids are on screens at school. So when they get home, we don't do screens until we watch
Mm-hmm.
some of a movie at the end of the day as a group. But like, you have to cancel out what happens as a parent. Like, just gets me frustrated.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Okay. So, do any students, so you're in ninth grade, do they all have iPhones? Are there some like of the dumb phones or Androids or anything you're seeing?
I have pretty much all iPhones, is what I see.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
almost all of them. I have just like a handful of kids who aren't allowed to bring their phones to school,
Mm-hmm.
which I appreciate, but then most of them have like the newest, model of iPhone. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Are you aware if they're all on like social media and what platforms they use?
yeah. So I have really good relationships with the kids, and they honestly tell
Mm-hmm.
me probably more than I would need to know
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty much all of them are on Snapchat.
Mm,
Definitely on TikTok.
okay.
Be Real is another one that
Yeah,
they're
I need to look into
using.
that more. Yep.
hmm those are the big ones, I would say.
Okay.
Instagram. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like those platforms have a positive impact on them?
No, not
Okay.
at all. And the more I've been listening to you, and the more I've been kind of digging and doing my own research, it's actually terrifying. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
the
agree.
I sometimes do like a screen time check in.
Hmm.
So like, hey, show me your screen time over the weekend, and I'll do
Great.
little
Yeah.
bets and competitions with the kids. Like if you get this down next week, we'll
Hmm.
have a free block, or I'll give you a treat or whatever.
Hmm.
The highest I've seen is 23 hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah, over a Saturday and a Sunday. Both days were in that 23-hour range. So I'm like, in my head, like, hey, so you did not sleep. You did not eat properly, I guarantee. You did not
Look anyone in the eye.
socialize with
Right.
people in real life. You did not go outside and breathe fresh air. Like you literally sat on a screen the entirety of your weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and then what I'm seeing, and which honestly has become like kind of my biggest concern over the last little bit, is like the mental health repercussions and just
Hmm.
the increase in, like, I can deal with low readers, there's strategies, and yes, it's hard for them, but like the mental health, the anxiety, the depression, the suicidal thoughts and attempts that I now as a teacher did not expect that I would be surrounded by on
Hmm.
a very normal basis. That's what's scary to me. And I don't know what else the correlation could be other than like these high screen times, the cyberbullying, all of the things that they're exposed to, the
Hmm.
not going outside, the not being physically active, the not connecting with peers or with family.
Hmm.
hmm
Yeah. It just
It's really
like
scary.
bubbles up. It's just so, I mean, I think it's 9%, at least this is an American stat, 9% of high schoolers have attempted suicide in the past year, let alone like the 30% that have suicidal thoughts of
Yeah,
teenagers. I mean, and you're seeing that actually in the classroom because you're seeing larger groups of these kids.
absolutely. In one year, I think it was 2021, I'm not at the same school anymore, but there were 3 suicide attempts in one school year.
Oh my God.
hmm
Yeah. I can't imagine being a teenager today. Like,
Me either.
yeah. Okay. So when it comes to smartphone use in schools, like I'm just trying with this conversation to bridge the gap between parents and teachers and help
Mhm.
parents understand what the teachers are dealing with a little better. So, um, first of all, I wonder if have you had any poor experiences with a parent related to a smartphone, or generally, are you just getting pushback?
Um, at the current school I'm at, not so much pushback, especially because it's been like an admin decision. So that's
Yeah,
been helpful
good.
if it's done as like a whole group.
Mm-hmm.
There are parents who don't like when, the office takes their child's phone and holds it for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, that hasn't been directed personally to me. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the reasons are, well, what if I need to get a hold of them?
Mm-hmm.
And the kids like say, well, my mom wants to be able to text me.
Yeah.
Like, but there are other ways that we can communicate if there were to be an emergency.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, yeah, if they were to be removed entirely, I could definitely see there being parent pushback in our
Mm-hmm.
community as a whole, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Do you feel like so the main theme in the pushback you're seeing is like I just want to be able to get a hold of them? Is it due to an emergent situation, or it's just like generally get a hold of them?
I think maybe in their minds, it's like, well, just in a case of an emergency, but I think it's the wanting to be in contact all the
Yeah.
time. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes if kids are getting texts and we are in the middle of class and they're like, oh, hey, you have your phone, get your phone in your locker. Like, oh, but
Hmm.
it's my mom.
Right.
But why is your mom texting?
I
She
know.
knows what time it is.
I know. This quote. There's a new book out, came today actually, Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which I highly recommend. But he says something like, "We overprotect them in the physical world, but underprotect them in the digital world. And I feel like we get a lot of insecurities about what they're doing. Are they okay? And we
Hmm.
just pummel them with contact and like track their location when really we need to be monitoring what they're doing on those devices more
Yeah.
than anything.
Yeah, I agree. I've had a couple of conversations with like friends of mine who have teenagers. My kids are still pretty young, so I
Mm-hmm.
still can control, the tech piece, but
Mm-hmm.
I say like you wouldn't take your child and drop them off in the middle of like a city center and
Mm-hmm.
leave them, alone for the day because you're terrified of what would happen and you want to protect them and keep them safe.
Yeah.
However, they're on their phones all through the night in their rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Their parents are not checking who they're contacting, who they're speaking with, what they're viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And just because they're at home under your roof, you think that they're safe,
Yeah.
when in fact, it's the opposite.
Well, and you could potentially, it could be considered like child abuse or something, or child neglect to leave a
Mm-hmm.
child in the middle of a city center by themselves where there's predators. But I mean, I would almost
Mm-hmm.
say the same thing about giving your young teen or younger child a phone with full access in their bedrooms at night. And that's where
Yeah.
predators know that they are and that they're not protected. It's
Yeah.
super scary.
And I would say it is the minority of kids that I talk to who have limitations on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very select few who have to plug in their phone in a common area at night,
Mm-hmm.
who have their parents, randomly check, what are you
Mm-hmm.
looking at? They're very, very few of them.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the disconnect is? Do you think that these parents that don't worry about it just aren't educated on the harms generally?
I think that's a big part of it. Like our school has held some info sessions. We had like police officers come and like show how easy it is to track kids down, but the attendance is very small.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably the parents who need to be there are not the ones who are there.
Yeah.
I think a big part of the disconnect is also the fact that the parents are also on their phones
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's modeled, and they are also,
Mm.
dealing with that. I don't want to say like addiction, but that,
Yeah.
cycle of scrolling, scrolling, scrolling.
Yeah. Do you think there's any teachers in the classroom that are maybe using their devices too much in front of the students?
Yes. I know that there are. I,
Okay.
I always tell my students at the beginning of the year, like, I'm asking you not to be on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be sitting and scrolling on mine. I don't need to be on mine either. Obviously, I'm an adult, and if my child is at home sick and I, have somebody watching them, I'm going to tell my
Mm-hmm.
kids like, hey, I'm going to keep my phone out just in case I get a phone call or a message. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be scrolling on my phone either, and I try and model that for my own children as well, because I don't want to be hypocritical. Like, no, this is not something I want to model for you.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My husband and I just started leaving our phones when the kids are home in our bedroom. And so
Mm-hmm.
the kids shouldn't see them at all. And
Yeah.
so when they know that, and so if they see us with it, they say, Mom, you have to put your phone
Yeah.
away. So, which has been really just positive for
Yeah.
our family. But that's
Yes.
interesting. So I hadn't thought to ask about the teachers using their phone during class, and probably, yeah, the same problem with what's happening with parents at home.
Yeah. Well, and I'm
Okay.
sure you see it in like sporting events too, like with your kids,
Mm-hmm.
even like family dinners at restaurants. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's full families sitting on their screens.
Tara, that's
Yeah.
my worst pet peeve. The other day I was at brunch with my friend, and there was one family next to me out of the 10 in the restaurant, one family that didn't have their kids have devices out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to get up. And when we leave, and I'm going to say, great job. Like, I'm really proud of you guys I think that's really cool that you didn't give them a device. And right before we left, one of the kids started getting antsy and they handed her a phone. And I was like, no, darn it.
Well, and that's that little moment
Right.
of discomfort. That is how they are taught to cope with that. So then
Mm-hmm.
when they're in a classroom and it's not always exciting,
Mm-hmm. Right.
um, and I
Right.
feel like in the last 17 years, like my job has slowly morphed from educator to entertainer, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to dance, and how do I make this jazzy to hold their attention? because those little moments in the restaurant or in the doctor's office or wherever where they have to sit and feel uncomfortable, they're not learning how to do that.
Right. And thankfully at your school, they can't look to their phone. But I am
Mm-hmm.
hearing from teachers that the kids can have their smartphones in class. And these, teachers are saying there's nothing I can do up there that pulls their attention away from those
No,
phones.
it's very hard.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to overcome that because life, honestly, there's sometimes just things are not that exciting.
Right. Life,
We,
work, everything.
yes, we all have to learn how to deal with that and move past it. And kids are
Mm-hmm.
not able to do that.
Right.
And then, so I'm at my current school. I don't see this as much, but I was at a much more difficult school just a few years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have already, that feeling of discomfort and that inability to focus and, all of those things. You mix that in with like oppositional defiant disorder, kids who struggle with ODD or ADHD or other, learning challenges. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had kids, scream in my face, swear at me.
Mm-hmm.
We had a student chucking classroom Chromebooks around the room because we told him he needed to get off of his device.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that hearing that no, and I can't do this right now. I need to be uncomfortable for students who already struggle. It
Mm-hmm.
just compacts that problem even more.
Yeah. And we all know that from young kids to even through to these
Mm-hmm.
teenagers, when you ask them to get off the device
Yeah.
from a 2-year-old to a 12-year-old, they're going to throw a fit about it
Yeah.
because that dopamine, that spiking is going to drop. And now they just can't control it. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
in their control. So you'll see those bigger reactions when it's related to a device. And that just tells you that's not right, you know?
Exactly. Well, and as parents, I see, like, I understand, wow, it's just so much easier to give in. But then I don't know, when does that go away? When do those tantrums stop? How do we,
Mm-hmm.
help these students transition into, the real world and a job and all of these
Yeah.
things that they need to do?
But being a parent shouldn't be easy, right? So we're doing the easy thing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's actually limiting our children's development, language development, communication skills, social skills, all these things. So we're actually like limiting them by making the easy decision rather than actually doing the hard thing and
Absolutely.
engaging them and dealing with the tantrum. And
Absolutely.
that's our job.
Yep.
Um,
I
okay.
agree.
So let's move on. Let me see. Anything you would request of parents, like if you had parents in front of you of your students, like what would you request of them related to the smartphones?
I think just setting boundaries, having frank and open conversations about what could potentially be seen, talking to them about, I don't know, like the snap maps, like why are we sharing our location with
Mm-hmm.
anyone? That's not necessary.
Or safe.
Um, I guess the highlight reel is another one. Like what you are seeing on social media is not true. Like that's not it. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much more beyond that we don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't let them have it at night. Like
Mm-hmm.
they need to sleep. They need to
Yeah.
disconnect from, having that contact with those people at school. And I think back to when I was in junior high and I had a hard day. I could go home and just be at home.
Right.
And I didn't have this constant connection to, whatever was going on, the drama, the gossip,
Mm-hmm.
all the things. Kids don't get that reprieve anymore.
And
So
that's why the
giving them that.
suicide rates are so high because
Mm-hmm.
they can't get away from the bullying. I mean, that's why cyberbullying is so much more deadly and dangerous than just regular old fashioned bullying.
Absolutely. We had a grade 5 student at our school a few years ago at like 3 o'clock in the morning on TikTok tell another student that she should go kill herself.
Mm-hmm.
So a 10-year-old is
Mm-hmm.
on her phone on TikTok
Mm-hmm.
at 3 a.m.
Right.
and she's sending these types of messages, like
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
parents have got to step up.
Yeah. Okay. So like, no phones in the bedroom. It's just a no brainer. And we got to start doing
Mm-hmm.
that. But at the very minimum, you can have the internet turned off after a certain time, right? Your
Yeah.
internet service provider has settings that you can, that are, I think, complementary to you, like that you
Mm-hmm.
can integrate into your home. So, okay. Anything you would request of the school districts related to kids and smartphones? I know yours has already implemented a phone
Mhm.
ban, but just generally, do you feel like all school districts should do that?
Yeah, I think there should be like a division wide, all the regulations essentially should be the same in an entire division so that the parents, those concerns that they have or that pushback can be dealt with at a divisional level. And then it's just like a consistency no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So like my students right now, they go to high school next year and there are teachers who just let them have access to their phones entirely. So now they're back to that.
Oh.
But if it was a division wide thing, then it's just an expectation. And then those kids in grade 5, 6, 7, like this will just be what it is. There won't be
Mm-hmm.
pushback anymore because that's the expectation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they know they're going to get them back next year. So it just seems even
Exactly.
more pointless to them. Like this isn't such an
Exactly.
inconvenience.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's wrap up smartphones and then we'll go to school issued devices.
Okay.
But if I were to ask you, do smartphones belong in the classroom?
No.
Okay. Thank
Zero.
you.
Yeah. I don't want them.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So students, do they have individual school issued devices at your school?
We have Chromebook carts so that
Okay.
we sign out and then students share like amongst classes. So it's not technically
Mm.
theirs. A few students do bring their own Chromebooks
Mm.
to class, but most of them just use the school one. So it's not like theirs.
Okay. That's
So
good.
multiple students are using them.
Okay. Do they take them home then?
No,
No.
no. A
Great.
few of them try and
Oh,
sneak them away, but we usually get them back.
okay.
Okay.
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know what grade they start using school issued devices?
Yeah, well, my 6-year-old has used Chromebooks in the classroom.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think the 5-year-olds do just because logging them on is such a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my daughter goes on, I wouldn't say every day, but every couple of days to play little games.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Super educational games.
Yeah.
Okay. Have any parents opted out of them using the Chromebooks in the classroom?
None.
Okay. None.
Mhm.
And I think the only cases I've actually heard of that happening is for kids that have some sort of disability or a mental issue where they just like have a very hard time disconnecting from it. So it's like
Yes.
extreme cases where they have to use pencil and paper. It's not like the
Yeah.
parent just doesn't want them on a device all the time.
Hmm.
Okay. Do you feel that learning through technology is as effective as like face-to-face hand to paper lessons?
No, honestly, for myself, I teach language arts. So
Mm-hmm.
the only time I use the Chromebooks really
Mm-hmm.
is typing. So if we're doing an essay or a narrative and they're doing a longer written piece, I'm like, well, this is like a life skill because when you have a job, you're going to be typing. We need to know how to type.
Mm-hmm.
We will do some research stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but that's all.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think like when we are reading, we have the book in our hands or we have a copy of the text that we're reading so students can interact and they can write and highlight. And
Mm-hmm.
I find for like especially my weaker readers,
Mm-hmm.
this is how they learn to become a better reader.
Mm-hmm. How often are they, when they're using their device in class, their school issued device, are they doing something other than what they're supposed to be doing on it?
Oh, there are some kids who are pretty much consistently like it's me wandering the
Mm-hmm.
aisles checking because they'll have multiple tabs open, have messages going over here. I have kids on Facebook Marketplace like shopping, like playing games. Like for some kids, it's like a pretty constant, like I have to watch them the whole time.
Okay. And you just watch them by physically walking around. You don't have like land school or anything where you can
No,
mirror their screens.
no.
Okay. Okay. So they can access social media on those devices?
There are some sites that are not fully blocked. So Facebook is one that they can access.
Okay.
TikTok, they just blocked, I think, last year. Yeah. Snapchat, they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then I am not super techie, but you
Mm-hmm.
hear about the kids using VPNs to try and navigate around the system. Like they're way smarter than I am in all of these areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there are some kids that can find a way.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So, any specific instances that you remember of a kid accessing something that was inappropriate, specifically bad or?
Um, my friend actually, he works in a different school division, but he just told me that a student in grade 3, so would be about 9 years old, logged into OnlyFans on a school Chromebook. Not sure if it was his account or like a parent account, but during class time logged onto OnlyFans. So, yeah. And
This is
that's my
an
son's age. So I was just like,
it's an
wow.
example of how little control the districts that are supposed to be
Mhm.
restricting these devices have.
Oh, yeah. Like the fact that OnlyFans is not blocked was just like baffling to me.
Right.
My only thing that I would think of is they would never expect, someone to log into OnlyFans, but it took one instance to prove that wrong.
But it can't be set up like site by site by site. It has to be like these sites are rated or something, and they can't
Yeah,
get access to all of these group of sites. And I don't know if that's how it is.
I don't know either. Yeah.
Are you okay if I share that story specifically on like a little clip?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Okay. Um, okay. So overall, do you feel like you have control over the school issued device use in your classroom?
If I am like an army sergeant wandering around, keeping my eyes on all 29 kids, sure. However, that's not always attainable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why like I use it for like that typing piece. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want them on it every day,
Mm-hmm.
because I lose a lot of time for some of those kids who are, again, just, they can't focus. Even on the free time, I'm like, go play cards,
Yeah.
like talk to each other
Mm-hmm.
instead of, yeah, just, can we play games on the Chromebook? Can we do this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a battle. It's just
Yeah.
always going to be a battle. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you feel like your school's relying too heavily on technology or is it being used effectively?
I think there's always a push for it. I know, I'm going to say like 15 years ago when I was really new, every school had a person whose job was, how do you integrate more tech into your class? And
Mm-hmm.
it was such a big push.
Mm-hmm.
And now it is kind of expected that we are bringing in, all these different means of doing things and for kids to show their learning. So I do feel like it's expected. Um, However, again, like the kids who are going to take it seriously are going to take it seriously, but the
Mm-hmm.
kids who aren't, it's just one more way for them to, access those sites that they shouldn't be accessing and then not doing the task at hand.
Yeah, and disconnecting from the actual lesson. So we're connecting
Exactly.
them, and what they're actually doing is disconnecting
Exactly.
from what they're supposed to be
Exactly.
doing. So, what does your perfect world look like when it comes to your students and technology?
I guess I wish more parents could be on the same page. And really like just start to see. I don't know. I've had this conversation before where I feel like we're at a peak here. Like something has to give at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wish that parents would all recognize how the harm that the smartphones and all this technology is having on the kids. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody could be in agreement that we need to protect our kids as long as possible
Mm-hmm.
from, from these dangers and recognize how it is affecting them mentally and their education as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I wish there was more agreement on that and that, there could be everybody come together and the kids then, if this is what's expected for me. School, this is what happens at school.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it looks like. It's okay to be bored. It's okay to, feel uncomfortable and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like for everyone to come together, it has to be consistent across school and home. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not just parents that have to put these restrictions in place. The schools have to follow suit so that the kids
Absolutely.
have a consistent experience.
Mm-hmm.
And until that happens, they're going to take advantage of whatever area where they get the access that they want.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so what if I asked you, does technology belong in schools?
I would say, I guess, like I think of like a coding class, something that's very specific, an area of technology, which I think is a really important skill, like for
Mm-hmm.
kids who want to go into computer engineering or those types
Mm-hmm.
of things, which are great jobs. And obviously, that's kind of the way of a lot of the future and the way things are going.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, yeah, I think that's an important skill. And lots of students are very, strong in those areas. In your average day to day classroom, I would say no. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's ways around it. And I think if we did, kind of scale back, and I think of even, 17 years ago, it was a long time ago, but really it's not that long.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount that has changed. I remember having to physically take my class to a computer lab and,
Mm-hmm.
sign them up, and we would go once a week.
Yeah.
And the amount of learning and engagement that was happening then versus now, the difference is huge.
Not in the favor of today's children.
Not in the favor of today's children. Absolutely not.
It's a very strong point.
Yes.
Okay, last question. Does
Yeah.
technology make your job easier or harder?
I'm going to say harder, simply like, again, than that 17-year span. Now with technology as a teacher, so not only am I constantly monitoring kids on their own technology, which is a whole other piece to my job that I didn't think I would
Mm-hmm.
spend so much time doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also like teachers, we're expected to do so much online now too, like our grading systems and having to consistently update them. And I feel like I'm doing more work as a teacher now than I did when I first began, because I
Mm-hmm.
have to, every 2 weeks make sure my grades are updated in Power School and add in comments on assignments and
Mm-hmm.
update Google Classroom for students who are away to make sure they're caught up on what they need to catch up on. I am doing way more work now than I was before.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to share on this topic before we close out?
Yeah, I don't know. I had mentioned this briefly
Yes.
when I messaged you.
Yeah.
So this is like a passion of mine, and I stumbled upon you, and I'm so grateful I did, because everything you say, I'm like, yes, this is what I've been
Yay.
thinking of for so long. Um, so I decided a couple of years ago to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
I just all of the things that I've witnessed, I needed to show it. I'm like, there's nothing out there that really shows what
Mm-hmm.
life as a teenager is really like in the technology sense.
Yes.
Um, so I did, and it's currently like being self-published.
Yeah,
And
good.
yeah, basically, I have my first copy right
Oh
here.
my gosh,
Yeah,
amazing. I
it's
love
a
that.
yeah, it's about two girls,
Uh-huh.
and they're both 15. And one girl, her life is in 2001, and the other girl, her life is in
Oh,
2022. And
that's
so it kind of bounces back and forth, but through some weird twist of fate, they are connected.
mm-hmm.
And they're connected over Messenger on an
Mm-hmm.
old computer, and they become really good friends. And it
Oh,
highlights, like, however, they are going through the similar struggles that teenage girls go through: the
mm-hmm.
body image, the insecurity, the boys, the friends, and the drama, and all of the things. But
Mm-hmm.
the girl in 2022, you just see how much more complex it is for her,
Mm-hmm.
with the
Wow.
added social media and disconnect from family, and just how that impacts her journey versus the girl in 2001.
That's a
Yeah.
fascinating way to show the differences.
Hmm.
And can I get a copy of that?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
can.
Yes, I
Yay.
would love to send it to you. Right now, we're
Okay.
just kind of working through promotion, and yeah,
Okay.
I hope my message comes across, and that even not, it's targeted towards a young adult audience, but I think it's a parent audience as well.
Yeah.
Um,
What age groups do you feel like what's too young to read that book, do you think? I'm just
um,
wondering if my
there,
daughter would want to read it.
yeah, I would say 13, 14.
Okay.
There is some mature content, just because, I tried to stay as true as possible
Yeah,
to, the
totally.
life of a teenage girl with unlimited access to her cell phone.
Okay.
So I think that would be an okay age range with some conversations for sure.
Yes, yes. Okay. Okay,
Yes.
good. Thank you so much. Let me stop recording.